Malala Yousafzai,
It is time to take action.
Outspoken critic of the Taliban. The youngest Nobel Peace Prize laureate. Tireless campaigner for girls' education. To mark International Women's Day, Malala met with The Economist's editor-in-chief, Zanny Minton-Beddoes, to discuss the effects of conflict on girls' education.
Right now, I'm sure you, along with all of us, are watching with horror the scenes in Ukraine, a country that, only a couple of weeks ago was a peaceful European country, and suddenly there are extraordinary pictures of kids as refugees, kids in bomb shelters. What goes through your mind when you see that?
It is heartbreaking to see these images of people collecting their belongings and leaving their homes. And I always tell people that becoming a refugee is no one's first choice. It's always the last, and it's always the only option that they have left. And we see that in Ukraine right now. And we all know that wars cause irreversible and unimaginable damage. But I think it's really important for all of us to realize that we need to come together and ask for an end to these wars, whether that is in Yemen, whether that is in Palestine, whether that is in Kashmir or Afghanistan or in Ukraine or any other country right now.
Is there a message that you would have for the young people of Ukraine right now?
I want to tell everyone in Ukraine, especially young girls, that we stand with you and none of this is your fault and this should not be happening. And I hope that this is also a time of awakening for all of us about how these conflicts affect so many countries. Like when you look at Afghanistan or other countries, these countries were not always poor and these countries were not always in these crises. Something happened abruptly and things changed. The same was the story of Swat Valley as well. It was a place of tourism and the Queen was visiting and we had a good economy. And then all of a sudden people appear with guns and bombs and you are like, what's happening? In these wars, things get so complicated that, that in the end, you just sort of forget to ask this basic question, which is, why is this happening? Why can't we put an end to these conflicts? So I hope that, that it wakes us up.
Is there anything that we've learned from the pandemic and the ability to do remote learning, the improvements in technology that can be helpful for children of conflict in future?
I think there are opportunities, but there are challenges as well in digital education. I think we need to take full advantage of it, but also ensure that we are addressing the gender gap in access to digital tools. Some of the research work that we have done in Nigeria and in Pakistan showed us that girls are less likely to have access to digital tools in their homes, especially when there's one digital device. It's more likely that the boy has access to it, or even if she has access to it, she's more busy in the house chores and she does not get enough time to be learning and studying. When leaders make policies for digital education, they have to ensure that they make gender-inclusive policies for the digital education future that we see.
Can we turn now to Afghanistan, which is another, almost unfathomable humanitarian tragedy, and at the same time, a government that clearly does not share your views on girls' education. How does the Malala Fund operate there at this point?
So Malala Fund was supporting activists in Afghanistan, and in these critical times, you have to ensure that they are safe. And because of that association with Malala Fund, a lot of them were in a very difficult situation. So most of them are now based in different countries or have found refuge in their final destination now. And all of them are still engaging in advocacy for girls' education, for women's rights and protection right now, and we support them. Regarding Afghanistan, this is a time where world leaders can show whether they are truly committed to girls' education or not. Afghanistan right now is the only country where girls are facing difficulties in their secondary education. They are basically facing a de facto ban on their secondary education. And the Taliban will continue to make excuses from lack of female teachers or safety issues on their way to schools to prevent girls from getting back into schools. So we need to ensure that those children can enroll back into schools and that the girls who will be returning back to school, that they receive quality education. what is deeply concerning is that the curriculum plans that we see already from the Taliban, they are taking out some of the key subjects, and we need to ensure that children are learning about sciences and social studies. So we need to ensure that the education that they get is quality education.
How do you think Western policymakers can really influence that? I mean, what are there tools that you think are not being used, approaches that are not being used? Because at the moment, everyone seems almost helpless at watching this.
I think, right now there are just so many things that need to happen, because we know that Afghanistan is literally, on the verge of a collapse, an economic collapse right now. And I hope that, first of all, these international communities, in all of the conversations and dialogues that they're having with the Taliban, that they make no compromise on the protection of women's rights, girls' education, and minorities' rights. That has to be their top priority. And I think along with that, there is need for financing. There's need for humanitarian fund, but there's also the issue of this traditional definition of humanitarian fund that does not include education. So there's another push to encourage these leaders to help in education as well, to ensure that we are actually helping the Afghanistan communities and people to actually be prepared for their future and to rebuild their economy. And I hope that President Biden and the US courts, they make just decisions for the Afghan reserves. That money belongs to the Afghan people, and it should go back to them. It should be helping them in recovering from this crisis. Like, we know that millions of Afghan people are at risk of starvation. We know that many of them are right now selling their daughters to help their families to survive. So when you see this kind of news, it breaks your heart, because you know that this is not the life that they should be facing right now. And this is something that the Western countries or other neighboring countries that could prevent. And I would also add that there is a strong role for the Muslim countries to play in this time right now. Their role is critical. I hope that OIC and other Muslim countries together stand up for the protection of women and girls, because the Taliban basically misused the name of Islam. So other Muslim countries need to stand up and say that in their countries, which are there are dozens of Muslim countries, that in their countries, women have access to education, they do jobs, they go to work, they don't need a male companion to go from one city to another. They can earn for themselves. And I think, they need to define what it means in Islam to have equality for women, to have education for girls. So they need to challenge the Taliban. Quality education is urgent. It is important. It is important for peace and stability. It is important for democracy. It is important for making informed decisions. And it is important for our own empowerment and self-care as well.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to find out more about our forthcoming subscriber events or watch previous discussions, please click the link. See you next time.